Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming to join us today. It is a great day because today is Champagne Day. So we are going to be talking about this delicious, wonderful, bubbly liquid. And you're not going to have to hear from me. You are going to get to hear from the head of public relations for the one and only Comité Champagne. And Philippe Wibrotte will be telling us all about the intricacies of champagne. We're going to have a couple of quiz questions so that we sort of learn a little something while we're talking today. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the Q&A. In the chat, please tell us where you're dialing in from. Tell us your favorite champagne. If you're drinking champagne today, maybe mention what it is. We're really, really excited. Philippe has an incredible history leading him up to his experience today. He spent some time in England. Now he's with us. He's gone back home. He is going to teach us all that we need to know about champagne. We're very, very lucky to have him today. I can't tell you how excited I am to hear all of the things that he has to say. Again, if you've got some Q&A, put it in the Q&A section. We'll review those at the end. And I think with that, you know, I'm going to turn it over to Philippe. Let's get to the good stuff, right?
Thank you very much, Bonnie. I'm very pleased to be with you all today. This is, yes, once again, this is Champagne Day, so it's a very day to talk about champagne, but you can, of course, talk about champagne anytime. So I wish first of all, to thank the WSET events team in London who have set this particular webinar up. So today we're going to give you an outline of the specificities of champagne wines for you to be able to identify some key differences of our appellation. We want you to participate, so you can type your answers in the chat box for the various questions we have for you. I believe we have the participants who have registered from roughly 72 different countries, I was told. So it's 6 p.m. here in Champagne, France, 12 noon in New York, 1 a.m. in Tokyo, 1 p.m. in Buenos Aires, 7 p.m. in Nairobi, 10 p.m. In New Delhi, midnight in Taipei, 3 a.m. in Sydney. So hello, everyone. Anyway, anytime, it's a good time for champagne. So let's start. Let's start with I would go through all of these various items within the next few minutes we're going to spend together, just a little less than an hour. And I have a first question for you. For you, when you hear the name champagne, what does it mean? What does champagne mean to you? We'll let you for 20 seconds for you to tell us when you hear the name champagne. So what do you have in mind? What does champagne mean to you? Okay, so I don't know if we've had any answers. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to see. So there are also questions coming in. Okay, so how are we getting on, Bonnie?
I can see a couple questions. I can see a couple answers coming in, and it is really great stuff. I see the words joy. I see the words celebration. I see the words happiness, elegance, and these are all wonderful things to sort of describe champagne. That is exactly how I would describe it as well. I don't wait for celebrations though. I have champagne all the time. So I don't know if I couldn't see if anybody said that, but I'm sure there's a few people out there that are not shy when we reach for the bubbles. But these are just some of those really wonderful words. Sophistication, I love that. Love, joy, again, those keep popping up. So that's what it means to some of us out there, I think.
It sounds very good. And all over the world, that's right. That's what champagne means to everyone. So I'm going to see if I can change. And so this is a cloud of words, but I think you said it all. Celebration, of course, you can't celebrate no event without champagne. All of these words come to everyone all around the world. I mean, this is the key word for champagne, but also authenticity. This is a wine which is produced within, of course, a delimited area in this particular region of France called Champagne. So Where is Champagne? Everybody knows where we are located. So Champagne's geographical location is right here. So we are a few kilometers east of Paris, and this particular region has 4 main sub-regions, shall we say. So this is the production area of Champagne where all of the grapes, 34,000 hectares, are planted. You have, first of all, the Montagne de Reims, where essentially this particular area is planted with Pinot Noir. You have the Vallée de la Marne, which is planted essentially with Meunier. You have La Côte des Blancs, Côte de Sézanne, planted essentially with Chardonnay, and the southern part of the region planted essentially with Pinot Noir. So this is where we are. A little bit about some of the histories. The history of Champagne is very rich. And from what you said, of course, for many of you, Champagne equals celebration. But how did it come about? In fact, we go back years. We have been making wine in Champagne for many, many years. Since the Roman times, the vines were planted here. I'm not going to go through all of the bubbles you see here with all these specific dates that we have, but all of this timeline, of course, you will be able to have. We will leave you these particular presentations through the WSET. We'll let you, of course, have all of this presentation. But what I can say is that we were producing still wine up to the end of the 17th century. And then this is the time when we started to produce sparkling wines, because the demand for this particular wine, this particular still wine, who had the tendency of sparkling, that's when we started to try to master more and more. And we keep, of course, we continue we have an objective of excellence, and we continue to make all the efforts to produce the best sparkling wine in the world. So it came about, really, perhaps as the date, that this is when Clovis was baptized in the city of Reims. His wife Clotilde wanted him to become a Christian. And so this is the reason why most of the kings of France were crowned then in the city of Reims. The holy oil, which was used for the baptism of Clovis, was then used for the coronation of the kings. And so when there were all these coronations, there was celebration, and of course they were drinking the local wine, the wines of Champagne. So behind all this festive image of Champagne, you of course lie a number of unique features: a demanding terroir, disciplined viticulture, ingenious winemaking process, and an appellation that stands as a benchmark. So I wanted to also to say just a few words about what a protected designation of origin is all about. All of these concepts sometimes is not all clear to everyone. In fact, an AOC, an appellation d'origine contrôlée, protégée, protected designation of origin, has 3 different criteria. First of all, historical. It's based on historical criteria, legal aspect, and consistency. This is also what makes its unique character. Impossible to substitute, no direct market competitors, only complementary products due its difference. So you can't duplicate this particular wine anywhere in the world, because of course it comes from a specific terroir. And of course we will talk about this particular notion of terroir and what terroir is all about. The Champagne appellation has been wanted by so many people around the world, and unfortunately still is. And the first recognition of our appellation really came through a court case that we had to take in the early part of the 19th century, when our neighbors in the Loire Valley, they were using, as you can see on this particular wine label, sparkling champagne. And so a particular court case was taken in order to stop this misuse of our name. And so that was the first time that we had this what we call jurisprudence, that we had a legal aspect behind the name Champagne. So the name Champagne started to be protected in France. And then, of course, it went to be protected in so many different parts of the world. Then we designated, so that was in the early part of the 19th century. The phylloxera started off with the first time we observed the phylloxera in Champagne was on the 5th of August, 1890. So we used to have over 60,000 hectares planted. So we had also to reorganize ourselves, and after the First World War, which did enormous damage in the region, we had to delimit we had to make the delimitation of the production area of Champagne. So since 1927, we delimited the production area of Champagne to 34,000 hectares. So the creation of the Appellation d'origine contrôlée in 1935. And in 1936, so this is the official recognition of the Appellation Champagne, with all the rules, regulations which come with it. So a strictly defined geographical production area, 7 authorized grape varieties. We have 4 authorized pruning techniques, limited yield per hectare, and for the pressing, the second fermentation in bottle, of course, la prise de mousse, all the aging of the cellars, as you know, the wines of Champagne age before they go on the market, 15 months minimum for non-vintage wines, 36 months minimum for vintage, and of course, a minimum potential alcohol content during the harvest. So all that makes for, and so only just a few of the rules and regulations for the making of Champagne, and the foundation of the Comité Champagne, which I'm going to say a few words in a minute. So a question for you, just to check that you've listened properly. Which historical events have made Champagne famous? So is it the marriages of the kings of France in Reims? Is it the French Revolution? Is it the coronations of the kings of France in Reims? And again, Bonnie, so you're welcome to come in and to tell me some of the answers we are getting.
Looks like we got a few answers that came up for us, I think. And it looks like everybody did a very good job.
Very good indeed. Yes, that's right. And it is. So you following. So that's what I wanted to check. So it's very good indeed. It is definitely, of course, the coronations of the kings of France. Okay, may I use? Yes, perfect. It's all working properly. So this is what made Champagnes become famous. It was the wine of the kings, and it became, of course, the king of wines. So the Comité Champagne was set in order for the two families that we have in Champagne, grower producers and champagne houses, to talk to each other. In Champagne, this is also something very specific. I don't think it exists in any other wine region in the world, the balance between the grower producers and champagne houses. The grower producers in Champagne, they own almost the entire vineyard. 90% of the production area of Champagne belong to over 16,000 growers. And on the other side, we have champagne houses who are responsible for 2/3 of all shipments and 90% of all export. So to make things simple, on one side, the raw material, on the other side, the market. And when you know this, I think it's always good to have this in mind when you talk about Champagne. You understand that they need to talk to each other on a regular basis. And this is why they have set the Comité Champagne in order to talk about economic matters, technical research and development programs in viticulture, enology, environmental issues, to talk about the protection of the name Champagne, and to talk about communications. So I wanted also just to say a few words about how this particular name is wanted all over the world, and so we need to make sure that people are not misusing our name, the name Champagne, which belongs to all the Champenois. And so we have a legal department working day in, day out to protect the name Champagne. We also train custom and excise, for instance, to detect any kind of wrongdoings. The name Champagne is protected in many parts of the world, but as you can see, not in Russia, nor in the USA, nor in Argentina so far. So, we, of course, are very much hoping that in the US this will change, and the sooner, of course, the better for us. But so we have so many different cases that people misusing our name. It can be product directly connected to the world of wine, but also, as you can see, a French firm, luxury product like Yves Saint Laurent in the 1990s, who was using the name Champagne on some of their perfume. We had also Fortnum & Mason, elderflower and champagne for tea, for biscuit, for bubble bath, you name it. All kind of people tried to take the name Champagne and steal the notoriety of the name Champagne for marketing purposes. And so each time that we can, in all the countries where the name Champagne is protected, of course, we take action. I wanted just to say for our American friends, this is on Times Square in New York. We had a campaign a few years back just to inform the general public not to be misled when they buy a bottle. So instead of buying when they are misled by perhaps this particular label like California champagne or American champagne, of course, you all know that this is not champagne from France. So we decided to try to inform in various ways. So we have teasers in Lifestyle Wine Magazine, for instance, to say Washington apples from Nevada. And of course, for any Americans, just not possible. Washington apples come from Washington, Florida oranges from Maine. Again, not possible. Alaskan salmon from Florida, again, not. And so Champagne, not from Champagne, no way. Why? Because Champagne is the name of a region of France, northeast of France, with climatic condition specifics, with soil, subsoil specific rules, regulations for the making of this product. And of course, it can't be duplicated nowhere else. So location matters for wine, very much so. And if you are interested in this particular aspect, we have a website called www.origins.wine, which now recoups over 31 wine regions around the world who have all the same problematics. So we're all joining forces. We need to make sure that when it comes to wine, people know that, of course, location matters very much. We don't want to drink the same product anywhere in the world. All of these differences of products are so important for everyone. So let's do another quiz. So the question is, only sparkling wine made from grapes grown and vinified in Champagne can be claimed as champagne. Is that true or false? Oh, very good indeed. So I'm impressed. Very good. Many thanks for all your answers there. And of course, this is what it is. And only sparkling wine made from grapes grown and vinified in Champagne can be claimed as champagne. So let's see if I can go back to the slides. Yes, working again. Now, let's see some key figures. Rushing through some of our figures, we have a delimited area production zone of 34,000 hectares. Within that production area, we have 319 wine producing villages, out of which we have 17 Grand Cru, 42 Premier Cru, and the other villages are called Cru. In Champagne, the entire village is called a Cru. The two families, grower producers and cooperatives, make the growers family, 16,200 grower producers, looking after, it's all divided up, you know, within 280,000 plots. On average, a grower in Champagne owns 2 hectares of vineyard. And in fact, we have more than 50%, 56% of our growers who own less than 1 hectare of vineyard. We also have 130 cooperatives, out of which 45 commercialize their own champagne, and 370 champagne houses, out of which 30, 40 major international brands. I'm sure you know so many of them. Champagne is a small vineyard. If you look on the world map, well, it's a pink prick on the world map. It's 0.5% of the vineyards in the world. It's 4% of all AOC, all vineyards planted in France, 7% of all AOC plantings in France. We shipped last year 320 million bottles. We didn't expect to recover so quickly. It was just really not something we were expecting. We were hoping to recover from the COVID problematic in 23, 24, but I mean, the thirst for champagne seems around the world to be too much. So everybody wanted to celebrate this particular passing through that difficult period. So out of the 320 million, 56% of the bottles are shipped outside France, so are exported. And we made a turnover of 5.7 billion euros last year. Another question for you. What are the three main export markets for champagne? Do you know? Okay, so what do we have? USA, UK, and Germany, USA, UK, and Italy. And the right answer is UK, USA, UK, and Japan. Absolutely. So this is the right answer. And I will try to click once again. Yes. And so here you have the podium of our export markets, with the USA being the first market. The UK used to be the first one. It's been overtaken by the USA now, with the thirst for champagne, which is really growing very fast, over 30% increase compared to 2019 last year. So, and Japan still is our third market, very mature, very keen on prestige cuvée, like in the US, by the way. So these are the top 15 markets, but if you are interested in all of these statistics, you are welcome to go on our website, champagne.com, and we have a section on economics, and you can find all of your markets and see how they've done last year and the years before. Perhaps just a word on the right-hand side of your screen, you see that champagne is essentially a market for what we call non-vintage, but could be perhaps more appropriate to say multi-vintage. And the rosé also, it's a big part of our exports, which makes last year was 12.6% of rosé were exported. Prestige cuvées are on the up as well, with 15.6% there. And as you can see, vintages are just 2.8%, only a small amount of vintages. Now, another question for you. What is a terroir? We're now going to talk about terroir. What is terroir for you? I can't remember if we have a slide coming up. Yes, I believe. Yes, you can write it down. What is terroir?
Just looking at some of the answers coming across the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Land, climate, soil, specific climate place, specific growing region, unique environment.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a lot of those things coming through the chat in terms of what we think terroir is, and what can you tell us that it is?
Okay, so I think in terroir there are really three elements which can't be dissociated from one another. So I've heard there's the right answers. We have soil and subsoil, climatic conditions, and know-how. So there are rules, reglementations également, which are really part of it all. So terroir are all these three elements. So the terroir of Champagne has specific climatic conditions. We have two major influences, continental and oceanic influences. So we have a favorable sunshine for the continental influence in summer. It can be quite cold in winter, risk of spring frost, of course. Oceanic influences, we have regular rainfalls, and temperatures which don't fluctuate that enormously. We also have a specific soil and subsoil, essentially limestone altogether, but we have chalk, marls, hard limestone, sand, heavy clays. That makes for the soil in the various parts of our production area of Champagne. On the topography, we have our slopes. Most of our vineyards are planted on slopes. It's really a hillside type of a landscape. And the slopes are on average 12% gradient, but they can go up to 59%. And also, we talked about, the expertise from the wine growers, ladies and gents working in the vineyard, putting rules, regulations, following all these standards for the making of champagne. So all these are the three major elements of terroir. So this is a picture of one part of our landscape, as it were. What we did also in Champagne, we selected the best grape varieties for the production for the wine we wanted to make. And so the three grape varieties we talked about. And do you know what are the three main grape varieties that we find in Champagne? So
let's go ahead and put your thoughts in the chat there. Oh, I'm seeing correct answers. Yes, all of the top three.
excellent.
Yep. Oh, we've got tons and tons. Oh, we have one Pinot Gris.
Interesting. Oops.
Yeah. But it looks most people seem to already know what goes into champagne. That's wonderful.
Well done, everyone. So yes, we have our first, the first three grape varieties. First of all, Pinot Noir. I won't go through all the specificities of the Pinot Noir. Of course, once again, we will leave you with some more information at the end of the webinar for you to go through all in the insight of our appellation. We have the second black grapes, which is Meunier grape variety, which is found essentially in the Marne Valley. And the third main grape variety being Chardonnay, which is based in the Côte des Blancs, Côte de Sézanne, essentially. But we also have four other grape varieties which are allowed. So altogether we have 7 grape varieties in Champagne which are allowed. We saw the first 3 ones. Do you know what are the 4 others? So you have A, B, or C. So is it Cabernet Sauvignon, Arban, Viognier, and Gamay? Is it Gamay, Colombard, Aligoté, and Sylvaner, or Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, Arban, and Petit Méliès? Oh, okay, doing very good here. Yes, I can see the answers, and absolutely, this is the answer is C, and I will try to reach my end. So here are pictures of the 4 other white grapes found in Champagne. So Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, Arban, and Petit Méliès. But that accounts for 0.3% of the vineyards in Champagne today. So it's still anecdotic, as it were. They will left out a little bit because of the difficulties they had to get to full maturation. But today, with climatic conditions changing, that might be perhaps something to look into in the future. We also have some highly regulated viticulture we talked about. We have 4 main pruning systems in Champagne. So this is also another specificity of our region: Cordon de Royal, Chablis, Guyot, Vallée de la Marne. Once again, I won't go into all the details. All that we will let you have some more information about. We have also, I wanted to mention another specificity of our region. Since 1956, at the Comité Champagne, collectively, grower producers and champagne houses follow the maturation of the grapes. So we have a maturation network which gets together 4 to 5 weeks prior to the harvest in order to set the optimum date for the harvest of the grapes. So the optimum sugar and acidity level. So what is very important in champagne is to have this particular balance. So we set the date of optimum harvest for each grape variety and each cru, each village of Champagne. So this is also a very important factor for the making of Champagne. Another quiz for you. The Champagne subsoil is predominantly sandstone, limestone, silt. Once again, very good indeed. Yes, this is essentially limestone over the Champagne region, and we talked about it. So again, more details in some more information we will give you at the end. Limestone is the answer for the Champagne subsoil. So we went through one part of the making of Champagne. You can't make a good wine without good grapes. Then you have the Champagne making process. The vinification of Champagne is very important in the sense that we are producing essentially a white wine out of 2/3 of black grapes. So the pressing of the grapes is one of the key elements within the process of the making of Champagne. It's a very slow process. We're going to see it in a minute. Then we settle the wine. Then the alcoholic fermentation and malolactic fermentation, which is optional. Then the blending, then the bottling, then the second fermentation and the aging on lees, the riddling of the bottles, the disgorgement, the dosage, the corking and wiring of the bottle packaging. So you see all these various steps take a bit of time for the Champagne. You have to be very patient when you work in Champagne, and the wines, you can't find them, the following year, of course. You have to wait 2-3 years, sometimes over 10 years before these particular wines go on the market. Okay, let's have a question for you. Do you know, are the grapes in Champagne harvested by hand, or is it mechanized? Yes, I think you all have to do the advanced level. Of course, it is only done by hand. We are, in fact, pressing, as I said, black grapes, essentially, and producing a white wine. So we don't want, of course, the juice to be tinted with the skin. And it's absolutely essential that in fact, it is the reglementations for the making of Champagne that, the grapes have to arrive full on to the press. So we employed every year 120,000 grape pickers, in fact, to do this particular job. So if you don't know what to do during harvest time in Champagne, you'll be welcome. Sorry, another question for you. For the pressing, the grapes must arrive, and I said it already. So we go, is it left in all clusters, distemmed, peeled, and deseeded? So is that A, B, or C? I think I gave already the answer. Indeed, left in all clusters. Yes, we went through that particular one. Absolutely essential. And today there are no wheelie machines able to do so. So we need to employ all these people. And so then the grapes come onto the press. There is a unit of pressing, pressuring in Champagne. It's a unit of 4,000 kilograms of grapes. And out of this 4,000 kilograms of grapes, we can only extract 2,550 liters of must of juice. We have 250 liters of what we call cuvée and 500 liters of taille. And it takes about 3 hours to obtain a quality must. Then in spring, following the harvest, the following year, blending time. So it takes from a few days to several weeks. So what the blending is in Champagne, we talked about a 3-dimensional blending, because we blend the cru, the villages, we blend the grape varieties, and we blend the years. So all that makes for a whole diversity of taste. So all these still wines, this is a very interesting time also to come and visit us in Champagne during this particular tasting time. So to taste these still wines before the second fermentation makes for a very good understanding what Champagne is all about and the diversity of our cru. Then is the prise de mousse. And the prise de mousse, it happens, of course, in the bottle. This is a time when we're going to make the wine sparkle. And to make this particular moment happen, we use yeast, sugar to produce ethanol and carbon dioxide. And so an addition of 4 grams per liter of sugar equals 1 bar of pressure. And in champagne, most of our champagne wines are about 6 bar of pressure. So for those who do some scuba diving, 6 bar of pressure is about 50 meters deep. That's the equivalent. And so 25 grams a liter makes for 6 bar of pressure. Then it's disgorgement. Disgorging time can be done automatically, or it can be done also by hand, what we call à la volée for some special cuvée or small volumes. Okay. Do you know what dosage corresponds to a Champagne Brut? You know, there is a whole scale, that this is another step when champagne producers can make the difference. We did the last moment to make its own touch to the last touch really for the making of this particular cuvée. So it can, there's left with no sugar, can be an extra brut, sec, demi-sec, etc. So what type of answers do we have? Okay, so we have a bit of all type of answers. In fact, this is the European legislations, and it says that in fact, Champagne Brut is between 0 and 12 grams per liter. So it's below 12 grams per liter. So anything between 0 and 12 can be called a Brut. Extra Brut has to be below 6, and residual sugar for the non-dosage. And then you have also demi-sec and doux. As this only very few cuvées of champagne now do, very few indeed. Okay, so what else have we got? Next, for the service, and we're approaching the end of this particular webinar, and all of the glassware. This is also a very key moment. The serving of champagne. To drink champagne, the right glass is very important. So it needs to be a tulip type of shape of glass. This is, I think, very important. That makes for the aromas, you know, we need to be concentrated, a bit narrower at the top, so also it concentrates all these subtle aromas of our wines. Temperature of the bottle. The essence of champagne is really freshness. So recommended serving temperature between 8 and 10 degrees Celsius, depending on the wine of champagne you are serving. You can do it in different ways. You can immerse the bottle in an ice bucket, half fill it with water and ice. You can do it 30 minutes before serving. You place also, you can place the bottle in the bottom of the refrigerator a few hours, but try to avoid the freezer. To serve it, good way to do it is in 2 stages. So then just for the foam to form, and then straight away you can pour it the second time. And so that's much easier than to fill it, to fill the glass up. And 2/3, that's the perfect way to do it. And then of course you can use an air cap to receive the bottle after opening it, if you want to keep it for a few hours. Another specificity also of champagne. On this particular slide, you see all of the compulsory elements that you have to find on the label of champagne. First of all, the Appellation champagne, it has to be there. Martin Huguenot, so number 2, this is the brand. Again, this is another compulsory element. Third compulsory element, the dosage, whether it's a brut, sec, demi-sec, extra brut, etc. You have also to find number 4, the content of the bottle. You have to have the percentage alcohol level in the bottle. You have to have the address of the producer. You have to have this particular registration number, which is given by the Comité Champagne. You also have to have this particular mention saying product of France. You can have also, you must have all these various allergies, you know, that different legislation depending on the countries that you have to be on the labels. You have to have also all of this, if one is missing, you know that it is not champagne. Also, what needs to be, when you open a bottle of champagne, the name champagne has to be written on the cork. If it's not written on the cork, it's not champagne, even if all of these various elements are on the label. If it's a vintage champagne, you have to find the name champagne on the cork, but also the vintage of that particular cuvée. So again, if it says a vintage on the label, but not on the cork, be careful. So all of these elements makes for recognition of what champagne is all about. Now, another question for you, champagne and sustainable development. This is one of the key strategies of our region today. And Champagne has done its first carbon footprint. And the question is, do you know, in which year did Champagne made its first carbon footprint analysis? Was it in 1998, 2002, 2003, or 2010? Okay, how are we doing? Okay, again, that's very. In fact, we are the first wine region in the world to have done its carbon footprint, and the right answer is 2003. This is, in fact, we are thinking about sustainability in our region for many years. Long before the 1990s, we were already putting strategies together in order to make sure that future generation in Champagne can continue, of course, to work within the region. So this first carbon footprint was made, and today a few more wine regions, of course, are following suit. And we have made already over the past 15 years. These are some results that we have achieved: a reduction of our carbon footprint by 20% per bottle. We have an objective of reducing by another 75% our carbon footprint by 2050. We have reduced by more than 50% our pesticide and nitrogen fertilizers over the past 15 years. We have an objective of reducing them by another 75% by 2025. We work very much as a circular economic system. I mean, we are treating and recycle all of our industrial waste today. All of the effluent byproduct also are treated, recycled. And we have an objective for the entire Champagne production area to have an environmental certification. Today, 54% of our producers have an environmental certification, and by 2030, so tomorrow, we want the entire wine region of Champagne to have a certification, an environmental certification. So we are working towards this particular objective, which is absolutely essential. As you know, we have major challenges ahead of us, and climatic condition, of course, is one of them. And we are working in different ways in order to make sure that we can carry on, and the whole of the future generation can continue to do so. So, this is perhaps, yes, before we go on to perhaps some questions you would like to ask, you will have, we have a massive open online course, which you can follow. It's free. You can just click on this particular website, champagne-mooc.com, and it takes about 4 to 5 hours roughly to do that particular course, which takes you through the terroir, the wine, the champagne making process, the history, the matching food with champagne, and you have also a premium version you can access. But this first one is absolutely free for you, so you are welcome. If you want to get into another insight into the wines of Champagne, you are very welcome to register to champagne-mooc.com. And to finish off with our final quiz of this evening. And before we open a bottle of champagne, do you know how many bubbles are in a glass of champagne? Okay, so how are we doing? Yes, I think it's not bad at all. Bit of a range of everything. And the answer is, in a glass of champagne, we have about 1 million bottles. So perhaps the question is, but who the hell has accounted for all of these bubbles in a glass of champagne? In fact, we have a very clever physician here in the city of Reims who's worked very much on the understanding of the nucleus of the bubble. So he's very keen on really developing really an insight within going through the what everything is going through in the wine of champagne and its bubbles. And in fact, is accounted in a glass of 10 centiliters of champagne, 10 centiliter glass, at a temperature of 8 degrees Celsius, it accounted 1,045,014 bubbles in that particular glass. So there you go. So anyway, I was delighted to be with you this evening. Cheers, everyone. Here's to Champagne Day, and thank you very much for your attention. And I hope to see you perhaps in Champagne. Don't hesitate to get in touch. Keep in touch. Go through our website. You're very much welcome, and have a very good Champagne Day. And I'm open, of course, to any of the questions you might have with a glass of champagne.
Well done. Well done. Thank you so much. We're definitely going to get to a few of those questions that we have in the Q&A box. There was one that I saw come across that I do want to address just briefly. Somebody said in the USA, there's a trend to order specifically, say the phrase French champagne. And I just want to call that to the table because it's a very important question. And that goes back to the slide that Philippe put up that said Corbel, California champagne. So if you remember what he was talking about, there are some older California wineries that really wanted to keep that phrase. But the way they got around it was by saying California champagne. And so when we go to restaurants here, I think it's very important that you say French champagne, because otherwise you might get anything. You might actually get Prosecco. And there's a lot of restaurants that are serving bubbles. And so a lot of times when I go to the restaurant, I'll just say, what do you have for bubbles? Because that means I'm open. You know, if all they have is Prosecco, I'll have that. If all they have is a Cava, I'll have that. But when I go somewhere and I'm really, really looking for champagne, I ensure that I say French champagne, because I do want to be clear about what I'm ordering. And we don't want anybody to be disappointed when they get that glass in front of them. And so Philippe, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, but that's where that comes from. There are some people that are saying California champagne, which, as Philippe has explained to us, is not technically champagne because it does not come from that region in France.
Now, very, very well said, Bonnie, and it's absolutely right. And I think it's because, I mean, you are in the know. I'm sure all the people who are following this particular webinar, I mean, you are, whether in the wine industry or amateur in wines, so you will make the difference. But for the great bulk of many people in the US, they have absolutely no idea. So it's very important, of course, to educate and to make sure that if they want to drink other sparkling wine, of course, they're very much welcome. But it's a bit of a pity if they are misled in thinking they are getting the product that they have heard about, but it is not. They can be quite disappointed. So our wines have all these particular specificities, which I'm sure you will be tasting, and all the iodine aspects of our wines, and also the balance and the length of our wines. But I'm sure you are tasting, I hope, a glass of champagne. So
yes, I know I am, absolutely. All right, let's get to some of these other questions. This is a great one. This is always good to know. What's the best way to store champagne to ensure that it maintains that freshness and all the things that we want to enjoy later?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's a very important also the storage of any wine, and champagne is it's the same. You need to have a constant temperature where you keep it. It's very good. You can just lie them down, but they can stay upright because you have also the gas chamber between the cork and the wine, which makes for humidify a little bit of the cork. So that's not a problem either. Constant temperature away from direct sunlight. Of course, you've got to have the proper light in your cellar if possible, but really keep it in the dark. High humidity level. So these are the three perhaps key elements for keeping champagne in the right conditions.
Excellent, excellent. Next question: are there many vineyard owners in Champagne that are not of French birthright? Interesting question.
Right. Yes. So that's a very, very good question. In fact, not that many. It's not that we don't like foreigners. We of course love everyone in Champagne, but it's just a way that generation after generation, there are really all these families who have owned the land for so many years, several centuries for many of them, and this particular land, in fact, is passed on. And this is also very much that's a very good question, because it goes to the culture of this particular region. In the northeast of France, people have suffered quite a great deal over the years without going back too far back, but we've had many problematics. And these particular people in Champagne are really down to earth, and they have held on to their land even when they didn't make any living out of it. And today, I mean, the land in Champagne, as you know, the AOC Champagne land is very expensive indeed, and they could go and live in any wonderful place in the world, in London or some other places where you are. But no, they don't. They really keep and hold on to it. So this is why essentially the families are essentially French. We have a few foreigners, but not many.
Excellent, excellent question. What is the French consumption compared to the export market? So we talked about some of the top export markets, and how much is France consuming?
So of course we per capita, of course we drink the most champagne of anywhere. In fact, the sales of champagne altogether. So in France, it's 44% of all champagne are consumed on the French market.
Wow, wow, excellent. Well, you must know it's good if the
we like it. Mind you, it's more and more difficult to find prestige cuvées in France. They seem to be exported a lot.
Yes. Another really great question here about global warming. Do you think it may eventually prevent champagne from making good sparkling wine because it becomes too warm?
Of course, this is something we very much looking into. We have, just for interest's sake, 49 weather stations spread out over the 34,000 hectares, probably the highest density of weather stations anywhere. So we are following up very closely all these various elements, climatic conditions changing. We know that climatic conditions are changing. We have gained 1.5 degrees Celsius over the past 30 years in Champagne on average. And it is definitely going, I mean, all the experts tell us that we will reach some increase, perhaps up to 2, 3, perhaps more degrees Celsius by the end of this century in the Northern Hemisphere. So of course, we take all this into account. And in any case, we don't say it very much. I'm just saying because we are in a close room here today, but we don't complain to the climatic conditions as of today. I mean, our wine have never been any better, we don't think. Another excellent harvest this year. 2022 was just absolutely magnificent. So we are very pleased with that. But of course, for the future, and everything that we do at the Comité Champagne is try to imagine Champagne in 10, 20, 30 years' time. And so, of course, we are putting together some ways, tools in order to make sure that future generation can continue to work in Champagne with different climatic conditions. So we are working on creating new grape varieties, to finding new ways. There are various ways also in the wineries how to cope with the new weather conditions. So there are many parameters which we can work on in order to continue to make the best sparkling wine.
Awesome, great, great. Next question. Do you see a trend for non-dosage champagne in France?
I think again, weather conditions, of course, help for the dosage to be lower, certainly, within all of the cuvées. But at the same time, I mean, the media talk a lot about perhaps non-dosage. What dosage is a very interesting as well item to talk about when you talk about Champagne, because just saying a number 6, 5, 7, 8, whatever grams per liter doesn't mean very much. In fact, everything to do is really to have the right balance between sugar and acidity. So from one year to the next, you might find that it is better to have no dosage, or perhaps 1 or 2 grams to balance it up. So yes, dosage is a very interesting another parameter as well for champagne.
Very good, very good. Question about malolactic fermentation. How often is it used, if at all? Questions about whether or not that'll disrupt acidity.
Right. Again, you have an excellent question. So as a whole in champagne, most champagne goes through the malolactic fermentation. Nevertheless, some producers sometimes decide not to do it ever. They want to not to do the malolactic fermentation. But at the same time, also this is a parameter which might be useful when it comes to weather conditions changing. By not doing the malolactic fermentation, you keep freshness into the wine. So that might be also another help for us.
Great question. All right, let's see. So I think there's a few questions in the Q&A about this. Can you talk to us a little bit more about glassware? There's some questions about when do you use a coupe? Do you not use a coupe? Do you use tulip? Do you use flute? So is there one rule in terms of glassware, or is it whatever we want? Can we use a mason jar? What are what are some of the things at the very least that you would recommend?
Yes,
a little bit more.
definitely. I mean, a tulip-shaped type of glass. Then it will depend, of course, at the moment you are having a champagne. So if you are having a champagne for a party or whatever, this particular glass is very fine for an aperitif. If you are having champagne, let's say, during the course of a meal, then perhaps you might prefer, again, a tall glass on a high stem, but perhaps a wider glass. Also you don't need so much bubble during the course of a meal, but you want to appreciate perhaps the essence of the wine you have in the glass. So a wider glass would be better on that occasion, for instance.
Great.
But of course, avoid any kind of non-glass without glass, as it were, not a paper or whatever plastic. This is a disaster.
I mean, if you're desperate, get it into whatever you can. All right, the next question, this was as a result, I'm not sure if you recall this was on your slide that had numbered the labels. And so they're asking what number 11 was. I don't know that we can actually answer that right now because we'd have to go back, but this presentation will be available to everyone. So if you have any more specific questions, definitely contact us. But for the sake of kind of answering that question and moving along, we'll make sure you get the PowerPoint. Question about natural yeast. Can champagne use natural yeast? Is there any co-ferment of grape varieties?
So again, I mean, each individual producer can make the decision of using a natural yeast. Yes, certainly, that's a possibility. It's not the great majority of champagne producers perhaps using this particular technique, but it is possible. Yes, of course.
Okay. Question about bubbles. Is it true that the bubbles should come up from the bottom towards the middle of the glass?
In fact, that's also a very interesting question about bubbles. I mean, it's really fascinating. Of course, the bubbles in the glass of champagne is very fine to start off with. And in fact, the essential condition for bubbles to appear in your glass is the presence of particles that you will find really on the internal walls of the glass. So like a textile fiber or an asperity, for example. So these small defects will then trap pockets of gas and which will be released, in fact, to form the bubbles of your champagne. So a perfectly clean glass without any roughness, in fact, would not allow you to observe any bubbles in the glass. So the nucleus of the bubble, in fact, is created. We talk also about the train of bubbles. It's created with all these various particles. Some glass makers, they make engravings in the glass, so to make the bubble start, like on a spiral, for instance. There are various ways really to create the bubbles. That's very interesting, because that's when you are also studying and testing wines. Sometimes you are testing a sparkling wine and you don't even talk about the bubbles. Definitely, this is a very important aspect. You can also hear the bubbles. So all your senses are really awakened when you taste champagne.
Yeah. That is great. We have a lot more questions. We're actually running out of time, unfortunately. So we're going to do our best to try to answer some of these later on. I mean, so much great information in here. Philippe, thank you so much for spending an hour of your time with us.
It's a pleasure.
Been absolutely wonderful. Again, this presentation will be available. If anybody has any questions about the WSET, there is a lot of information online. I've seen our events team kind of replying to a few things. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. For those of you that just took your D4 sparkling wine, I'm sorry that we didn't do this presentation before the exam on Tuesday, but it was really absolutely wonderful, Philippe. And I think there were some questions about coming out to visit. So you might have a few inquiries coming your way. I know we would all love to do it. And again, thanks everybody. My name is Bonnie Buchanan, Head of Global Accounts for WSET. And that will be it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good time. And here's to champagne.
Cheers.